wash my soul in the ocean, in the tears of God, I let it go.
Hello, my astrology friends and family. This is Lada from AstroladaOfficial, and I'm super excited about this video. I've been researching it for the last few months, and this is about the different generations: baby boomers, X-Geners, Millennials, Xennials, Alpha, Zeta. We'll go through all of them through the eyes of astrology. And the most important thing is we're going to look at their past lifetimes, and we're going to look at their current mission in life, what they came here in flux to change in the world. And you know, what determines the generation, even sociologists who are not into astrology have actually noticed that there are different generations, and the generations are different in length. They notice it, and they aligned it within 2-3 years to the change of Pluto in signs, because Pluto is the most generational planet, is the outermost planet, and every time it changes sign, a new generation with new soul evolution goal comes, because Pluto is the planet that rules the evolution, the very highest evolution of the soul, the alignment of the personal will, which is Mars, with the divine will, which is Pluto, the high vibration of Mars, as they call it. So whenever Pluto goes, the divine will works through those people born with Pluto there, us for the goals, whatever the divine goals are. And whenever Pluto changes signs, the culture changes. Those people born with the different Pluto signs, they have different preferences. As a whole, as a generation, we're not talking individually. I mean, I'm not a baby boomer, but I like some good rock and roll and jazz that came way before me. But generally, a generation, they create new culture, they create new politics, they create new levels of consciousness, they create new entertainment. Everything changes from generation to generation, and that's all due to Pluto. And it's incredible that even our scientists have seen and noticed that, but they are not aware that it's due to Pluto, and you're privy to a really big secret. And by the way, before I start, I want to let you know that I'm doing a Pluto webinar, which will be 5 to 6 hours, about Pluto entering in Aquarius, which will be towards the end of February, the beginning of March. You can already sign up now because it's on a discount when you're early bird. And I'm going to look at all the years ahead, 20 years Pluto will be in Aquarius, how it will affect you personally, for everyone personally, what every transit we're going to cover, what will happen every year that it's going to happen. And for you, you'll know which year this transit will happen, what house or what planet it will affect, if any. Some people might not have any, well, everyone will have something affected in their chart, and you'll see how to know exactly what it is and which year and when it will happen and how. Anyway, come in. I always price my courses super cheaply so they can be accessible to as many people as possible. I think this one will be probably 200-300 people there, but everyone will receive personal information through this video. Okay, so let's start with the first important generations that are still alive, and these are the baby boomers. This is when Pluto entered Leo, and that happened from 1938 till 1957. That was about 20 years of that generation, the baby boomers, that Pluto was there. Because as you'll see, the more Pluto moves, and Pluto stayed in Scorpio only for 10 years. So the so-called Millennials had only 10 years to be born, while the baby boomers had 20 years to be born. So what was happening around that time, and what did they bring, and what are their past lifetimes and their mission, and what did they bring to the world and continue to bring? So they started being born from 1938 till 1957. So you'd realize that they won't immediately impact the world. They will impact the world the following years when they grow up in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s. They continue now, they're still alive. So their mission was to kind of rise up the joyfulness of the world, because it happened right after the two world wars, or in the middle of the two world wars. They came here full of zest, those souls that were born during Pluto in Leo. They came here loving life, remembering past lifetimes of glory, of entertainment, of enjoyment, of when life was a thrill. And imagine such babies being born in the middle of some of the hugest crises, two world wars, and they bring a new spark of hope. And that's what they did when they were growing up. Those Pluto in Leo, the baby boomers, what did they create? They create the love revolution. Is that how it's called? The hippies, the flower revolution. Suddenly, when they grow up, suddenly from this kind of very constricted clothes women were wearing and very rigid fashions they had, they came here super creatively. Leo is the most creative side. And they said, we're going to revolutionize fashion, music. We're going to create the teenage culture. There was no teenage culture before. Maybe there was, but it was very different before Pluto in Leo generations. The huge concerts of Elvis Presley, of the Beatles. That was the baby boomers that were going to those concerts. They created that, the rock and roll culture. And they created the traditional, like the classical rock and roll. They created their clothes were colorful, full of flowers. They were all about free love. I mean, there was a bit of idealism there. A fire sign, all fire signs are very idealistic. So sometimes they might be overly romantic approach to life, the baby boomers, the Pluto and Leo generations, and even fatally romantic approach to life, like the hippies, like, oh, we're not going to work, all we're going to do is enjoy, hug, love, party. Well, it can happen for a little bit, but it's a phase as well. There's things for everything, but they showed us. They were like an echo back from some very jubilant times. Maybe some of those souls came from Bacchanalian times, when or times when there is like big feasts. And actually, every soul, it's very interesting how the master being Soduno describes it, that soul come like flocks of birds together in big flocks when they incarnate. And there are also smaller flocks within the bigger flocks, like family units or countries that they populate specifically. But Pluto and Leo, they were born everywhere around the world and every generation. So they came here to bring joy back to life, to show us we can have fun. They were larger than life. They are still larger than life. Look at your Ozzy Osbourne Pluto and Leo generation. Look at your, some people that the Pluto and Leo generations that were stars. For the other Pluto and Leo generations, and they're still iconic and stars for the other generations because of they're like so over the top. So this is Leo, like the sun. It comes and it blinds everything, and it's over the top. So David Bowie, very creative, they break boundaries. They're not afraid to stick out like a sore thumb even. Ozzy Osbourne, they're partiers, they're wild. They're kings in their own name. Freddie Mercury, I want to break free, like always dancing like that. And the performance is like over the top, the performance is in your face. And of course, Elton John with the feathers. Do you get the Leo energy here? You probably know a few Leos that are just bombastic and over the top, but this was a whole generation. Of course, everyone was very different. There were shy people in between them. There's always different people in every generation, but as a general energy, they have this spark. And they came here to show that life was not just misery, that life was not just about suffering after world wars and whatever, that life was also to have fun, to enjoy ourselves. They started the party culture. I'm sure there were parties before that, but not on such a massive level where teenagers and whatnot, everyone was involved in that, and the poor as well. And they came to remind us we can be creative. And no one revolutionized music and in such a big and dramatic way, music and film industry, like the Pluto and Leo generations, with the rock and roll and the Elvis Presleys and the Beatles and the Pink Floyds. They're also Leo. generations, and Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix, the Pluto and Leo generations, like Bob Dylan. Wow. I mean, these are icon stars. It's hard to match them. I know that now the most listened one is Taylor Swift, of course, because I mean, but these will always stay there as the solar ones, you know, that they're larger than life stars, an immortal. Leo is an immortal sign, and as you can see, they're kind of, this generation is immortal. They don't want to die off. I'm not saying they have to, but like, they are still like the current president in the United States, the previous presidents of the United States, Donald Trump, and they don't want to die off. They want to have power, and because Leo is a sign of power, is the king, so they want to be still in power. And they created the big boss culture as well. They created the big flashy brands of show off, of status show off. You know, they were our parents, because my parents are both Pluto and Leo generations. They created this, you know, very competitive world as well, and this dream as well, to be on top, to make my dream come true. They broke through that impossibility that for previous generations, maybe, well, you're born as a farmer, you'll be a farmer. But much more Pluto and Cancer generations, the silent ones, they were called. They're like, oh, whatever your family was, you know, you'll probably carry on in the steps. Pluto and Leo was like, no, I'm going to shine. I'm going to make my dream come true. Everything is possible. Yeah, I'm here, and I'm queer, and I'm whatever. Look at me. Of course, Pluto and Leo are very strong-willed, and especially the baby boomers clash very big with the millennials, and the millennials were the Pluto in Scorpio generations that were born, because these two signs, Leo and Pluto, first of all, they square, second of all, they both are signs of extreme willpower. So you always read those articles where the millennials say, oh, the baby boomers, assholes, if it wasn't, they ruined our life with their wrong policies and whatever. And the baby boomer says, the millennials, they're lazy, whatever. They don't want to... they want things their own way, so they're clashing like crazy. I've never heard two other generations say the Xennials are clashing with the Alpha generation. No, the biggest battle is between Leo and Scorpio, because these both signs and generations basically are so powerful in their own nature. Not every sign has this power, like Leo and Scorpio. And they were very childlike. I don't know, because both of my parents are that generation. First of all, both of my parents are Leo sun and Pluto in Leo. So they're a bit of dictators, both of them, very overpowering. When they enter a room, they're loud. But I'm not talking the whole generation is like that, but it's the general aura of it. And oh my God, no one throws a party like Pluto and Leo generations. My parents to this day, it was so funny that we were just leaving from the States. I'll tell you a quick story that describes very much the Pluto and Leo generation. So, and we stayed in Bulgaria for a year and a half, and we started missing our family in the States. So we're going to go back to the States for a bit. So we told my parents, and they both, for days, weeks, my mom is crying. Life is finished. What am I going to do without you? My dad, I can't. You're not my... What are you going to do there? Life without you? It's like without the grandkids. Big drama, very dramatic, like Pluto and Leo generations. And we leave, and the moment we arrive here in the States, I call my parents. I can't find them for 2 days. Like, what's happening? And suddenly a friend of theirs is calling me on fire. And I'm like, oh, he's never calls me. What is happening? I'm thinking the worst. Something's happened. And I'm like, what the hell has happened? And I call and I hear loud music. And I see a video. He turns the phone. I see my parents in a nightclub dancing, and he's telling me, your parents bought a Mercedes. We're here celebrating. And I'm like, is that how you're grieving that we left? All this big drama of you missing us? So they're party people by soul. They'll always, and then they bought this, like, not just my parents, the whole Pluto and Leo generations. There is this, even you see that they like their grand cars and big mansions to show off, and a lot of the wealth is still in the hands of Pluto and Leo. They don't want to let it go. They're the kings. And they, of course, there is this party spirit in them, larger than life, but also bossy, also narcissistic. During the Pluto in Leo time, a lot of dictators were around, or very powerful political figures like Hitler, Churchill, such powerful presence people. They were not themselves Pluto in Leo, but they lived in those times. And this was the times as well, Pluto in Leo, during the golden age of Hollywood. That was when glamour was created. And Leo, of course, is the most glitzy, glamorous sign. And this was when Warner Bros, Metro Goldwyn, and all those big Hollywood studios were controlling basically the whole industry, music, film industry. And they were showing this really glamorous image. They created the celebrity culture, the Pluto and Leo generations. They created the rock star culture. They created the glamour culture of any sort. So, they were a memorable, they're powerful, memorable, colorful generations, the ones of them that are still with us. Very idealistic and inspired generations. That's why also, as I said, was the flower power. Possibly the Pluto and Sagittarius generation will be just as idealistic, Generation Z, but they won't be as idealistic and transformative in the arts and make it in such a big bang way. They'll be transformative in knowledge, in spirituality, in education in some way. But powerful convictions, the Pluto and Leo generations, like they still are like, I believe what I believe. And of course, they're natural leaders. Fame, becoming someone important. They open this window for all of us, as I said, to fulfill your dreams, to be someone important, to climb maybe from the peasant layers to the celebrity layers to the elites layers, which is the Leo is the elites. So they maybe not, it's not possible for everyone, but they open this door collectively that it is a possibility to get from here maybe up there, just like a movie star coming out of an orphanage can suddenly be the queen of the world type of, they're charismatic dictators. I love to call my parents, but life would be so miserable and gray without them. And there's something else that's very interesting. Pluto and Leo generations was the baby boomers, a huge boom in births. Leo rules children. And it's not surprising that the growth of the population was exponential then. And something interesting to think, Pluto is entering into the opposite sign of Leo from 2023, 2024, which always the opposite sign shows the polar opposite. And it will stay there for 20 years till 2044. So I'm thinking, if here with Pluto and Leo we had a boom in pregnancy and fertility and so many children, I'm thinking here will be the opposite. Pluto and Leo, you will see reduction of population, less births, way less more per person births than they were at the time of the Pluto and Leo generations. Okay, what else is about them? Let's talk about their past lifetimes. We said what they came here to do, and we're very grateful for them. They opened the doors for this. They empowered the individual to allow for creative, self-directed realization, because now so many people can be artists, musicians. They open those doors for us. So they empowered us for creative self-realization. But interesting, it's been explored. There is an amazing book, and it's called, let me just tell you if you want to read it. So I'm not just talking out of my ass. So you know that this has been researched scientifically. It's Understanding Karmic Complexes. It's from Patricia Walls. So she was not just an astrologer, she's also someone who regresses people. And she noticed that so many people that she regressed with Pluto and Leo were born in cultures like in Africa. And for example, they're in past lifetimes, maybe not immediate past lifetimes, but long time ago, where there was a lot of freedom there, but there was also a lot of they were dancing, drumming, they were very solar cultures, the tribal, the African tribes, very fun-loving dance. And if you go still to some of those tribes, you'd notice this leonine creative expression energy. She also noticed that a lot of them remembered past lifetimes in the ancient Egypt times. It was, very solar again. With when the Sphinx was created during the age of Leo. So I personally realized that Pluto in Leo generations, they probably had past lifetimes, many of them in some places in Africa, also previous, because we have many past lifetimes. They were also connected to when the pyramids were being built, especially the Sphinx, which is about 10,000 years, 10 to 12,000 years before Christ, 10 to 12,000 years from now, when the spring equinox was the constellation of Leo was rising. And they have memories of that. That was the last age of Atlantean. That was the ending and the most glorious age of Atlantis. That was the most hedonistic. That was the most over the top. And that was the most, with very powerful leaders, that kind of fucked up stuff at the end. But it was the golden age. So a lot of those souls come from, they've experienced at least one lifetime. And after that, later as well, in the past 10,000 years, but they've experienced at least one lifetime, and they remember it at the core of their soul, of those glorious time when life was glorious, and during when life was full of creative. And when psychics go back to Atlantis, they see that people lived like it was like a play, like a game. They were like kids. It was not very highly intellectual, whatever, but everyone was doing what they loved to do. And it was very much like parallel play with kids in kindergarten. And everyone was allowed to do what they wanted. There was a lot of fun and joy, and the vibration of Atlantis before it collapsed. So at the age of Leo, was at 500, which is joy and love. And Leo is very much about joy and love. So they started opening this door for us collectively. Also, so they come, some of them had many lives in the golden age. Some of them had lives in mighty kingdoms, other mighty kingdoms, especially patriarchal or priest-king cultures. That's why Egypt was like that. I'm sure there were such cultures around the world, where the king is also the priest, where the king was always high initiate, and it was a benevolent figure. It was not someone who was driven to power. He had to study for 20 years to have access to the higher worlds and would rule very wisely. This was the ancient Egyptian civilization, way before the recorded time even, and so on. So they have memories of such honorable and mighty kingdoms. Some of them might have been even in royalty, but that's too many people to say, oh, you're all kings, but you lived in such times. And maybe they lived in times with a lot of creativity and self-expression as well. And possibly in times when there were a lot of some very powerful kings as well, and that might have become tyrannical, the darker side of Leo. This was about the Pluto in Leo generations, fascinating generations. Now we continue to the next one. After the glamour, pomp, and grandomania of the Pluto in Leo generation came the way more humble and somewhat more disgruntled generations of Pluto in Virgo. Pluto moved in Virgo around 1957-58 and stayed there till 1972 approximately. So everyone born within that time, 1957-58 to 1972, a Pluto in Virgo generation. And you'll see how different they are. And they're called the Gen Xer, Generation X, a very famous generation as well, but for very different reasons than the Pluto in Leo generation. They were way more, Virgo is a way more quiet, humble sign, and way more, let's say, it sees where things are wrong. This is what Virgo is. It's here, they came as a big flock of people to point where the social wrongs are, where the inequalities are, where the marginalized are. Actually, they came up to kind of fix the mess, the grandomania, the overspending, the overglamorization of the of the Pluto in Leo generation. They had to clean up their mess because Virgo is the cleaner. The overspending, the grand policies of Pluto in Leo generations, and even their culture, the culture that they created. Because when they grew up, what did they bring to us as culture, as music? They brought us hip hop, they brought us punk, they brought us metal, heavy metal. They were the generation that created grunge. Even the look of those people, it's very different than the Pluto, the glamour of the Pluto in Leo generation, the golden age of Hollywood. They were not about those external expressions of power. And they were criticizing society because that's what hip hop originally was about, to criticize the wrongs of society. This is what punk and grunge were about. They were talking about more poignant topics, these styles of music. They were talking about poverty, marginalized people, and so on. So they were really here to point the mistakes. That's very Virgoish. And to correct it. And a lot of them also became very, first of all, that Virgo is a very more neurotic sign. So they started becoming aware that the way we're living, and maybe when they were researched through past lifetimes, they saw that past life hypnotherapy, that a lot of them have been through, they were incarnated in times where there was pandemics or diseases or the plagues and so on, where people were dying from malnourishment, from lack of hygiene. So they experienced that, and they came here trying to, bringing this knowledge and saying we have to change it. And collectively, they were the generation that first became open to new holistic methods of healing. First, they started, because they were way more, because their constitutions were more sensitive to pollutants, because their constitutions were more sensitive to lack of hygiene, to malnutrition. They started noticing how badly it's affecting them. So a lot of kind of digestive problems, intestinal problems, this generation started happening, problems with nervousness, anxiety. So they were either very medicated generation. Originally, a lot of them probably started with getting medicated pharmaceuticals, which is again Pluto in Virgo energy. But a lot of them realized that that's not the way to take care of your health. The real way is to live holistically. That's why, thanks to the Pluto in Virgo generation, which are still very much present and in power, we have the boom of organic food industry, the boom of wellness industry, body, mind, the yoga. I'm sure a lot of Pluto and Virgo people are interested also in any kind of alternative therapies and methods of healing, of supplements as well, of being nutritionally savvy. They learn, and they taught all the other generations that follow the value of nutrition, the value of mind, body, soul balance, and the dangers of over medicating yourself. They have to be the ones that show us the scourge of basically they were the heroin generation, the generation of antidepressants, the generation of all this kind of, other generations have been using them too, but they were the guinea pig, so to speak. And they said, well, when you observe the scourge of this, you're like, okay, we cannot continue like that. And they make everyone else aware that there is other more holistic ways. And they're very much a generation bent on self-improvement, which is Virgo quality. That's why, again, thanks to them, the industries of self-improvement and self-help books and so on started booming. Because when they grew up, it was the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, it brought us all of those things. They're very much more self-critical, bent on self-improvement, aware of nutrition. Okay. They came to critically examine society. We talked about that. And there were a generation that Pluto in Virgo moved much faster. It had about 14 years there rather than the 20 years of Leo. So they had to grow up faster. And that was the first generation where both parents started working. So they had to take care. One of the first generations that they were kind of left take care of themselves alone. And earth signs are very much about taking responsibility for yourself, for your body, for your health, for your sustenance. So they had to, and they were the first generations where parents started divorcing. Virgo is one of the signs of divorce, by the way, because Virgo is the 12th sign, which is dissolution from the 7th sign, Libra. Libra is marriage, 7th sign is dissolution, 12th sign from it is dissolution of something. So divorces started becoming very prevalent in that generation. And they were one of the first generations to start growing up with just one parent and to have to kind of self-raise themselves, which is very much a responsibility of the earth sign of Virgo. And they probably, when they were also looked at, a lot of them had memories of past lives of chastity, where they were born in cultures where chastity was very important. Oh, you're going to be a virgin till you get married. Oh, you're going to, Vestal virgin. Some of them would have memories of, committing to chastity and vows. And Virgo is on the axis of Virgo Pisces. And the Pisces age was Christianity, the last 2000 years, when especially this kind of chastity, you have to be a virgin, was introduced. And so they had lives before where they were monks or nuns, or where they were celibate, or whether by force or not. And they come with those memories, and they actually went the opposite side, because there is this dichotomy or controversy in Virgo, which is the virgin, but also the whore, because Virgo is the sign, interestingly enough, that rules prostitution, but also virginity. How interesting is that? Huh? The two extremes. So, but they had to experience the other extreme from virginity too. And a lot of them, I know a lot of Pluto in Virgo generations that actually have sworn off sex as well. So you can see both extremes, but they came here to understand and to, to correct, because when the pendulum swings too far in one side, like when they were like in cultures of total chastity, they had to experience the other swing of the pendulum and come and find the middle balance. You can't just be sleeping around, and you can't just be totally denouncing the body needs. So they were also the ones that, again, through holistic method, through experiencing the extremes in their own, they helped us become more aware of such things. But because they came also from cultures where sex used to be a sacred act, the further cultures before Christianity or other parallel cultures where Virgo is a very sacred sign, where actually the purification of the senses starts, and where it's the sign of the Mother Mary, by the way, and where the not only purification of the senses, but purification of the astral body starts. And it starts with fasting. It starts with learning control over the physical desires. So that's the first steps in any mystery school for spiritual awakening. Start with fasting, and that's what Virgo did. They started saying we have to eat organic, we have to eat clean. Pluto and Virgo generations. We have to take care of our mental and health bodies, not just fix things with pills. It's body-mind balance. We have to exercise. There were the generations that started exercising way more, or for health, not for pleasure, not just to play tennis or whatever. They started doing it for health reasons. So very, very interesting, cynical, more cynical, more learning to do right choices, because this is what Virgo rules. It rules the intestines that let in certain things only into your bloodstreams. And that's what they're learning, to discriminate what is healthy, what is unhealthy, what is healthy in society, in food, in every aspect. Sorry, I'm just reading my notes here that I've done. They also have a lot of technical skills. Actually, Pluto in Virgo generations, when they were regressed back, some of them remembered being alive during Atlantis, having past lifetimes during Atlantis, during the age of Virgo. The age of Virgo was 14,000 years ago. when the spring equinox was aligned with the constellation of the Virgin. So that was at the height of Atlantis. That was still the golden age, but that was when the technological advances of Atlantis were developed, were perfected, and peaked. And after that came the age of Leo, and that's when Atlantis dissolved or was destroyed. So a lot of them came with their soul remembering those times of technological advance. Virgo is a very scientific sign. And this was the generation that developed the internet. This was the generation that developed the World Wide Web, that developed the new technologies and the innovative technologies. So people with Pluto in Virgo generations, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, so they brought those skills back, hopefully to be used to not in destructive ways, but again, we have to thank them for that. And some of the, the amazing programmers and so on. Also, when they were regressed, they saw lives of healers, some of them. Another interesting side of the Pluto and Virgo generations are Virgo is work in astrology. Actually, slavery almost, and employment. When they were regressed, a lot of them saw themselves in situations where they experienced certain life as slaves, and where they have to just do this monotonous grinding work from morning to evening, servants, slaves, and victims sometimes. Virgo has this kind of either poverty, extreme poverty, hunger. And when they came here, they came with a very powerful work ethics, and they became one of the best employees. They developed the yuppie culture in the 90s. They were the height of the Pluto in Virgo generation when they were grown up. So they actually might have become even extreme work. What's it called? Workaholics culture. And they had to learn again to relearn the balance of to relearn the balance of work-life balance. So again, they're still working on those topics. Mila, sorry guys, it's hard to work when you work from home, but this is the fun of it. So you see, it's a fascinating generation. I'm really, especially, I love the grungy generation, but the style of music was so different. And they went through addiction, self-medication, or over-reliance on medications to find natural alternative ways. They taught us that the only way to be healthy is to live holistically. And we're going to go into the next generation now. And we come to my generation, the so-called Xennials. Many of you don't even know about them because that was Pluto in Libra generation, and Libra is the sign of others, so they don't like to make much fuss about themselves. So they were a little bit not noticed generation, but they influence our life in incredible way as well. They were born, the Xennials were born from around 1971, 72 to around 1983. So they had only 10 years to be born approximately, because Pluto stays in each sign very different time than in others. So they might be overlooked, but that's the first sign, because the signs start from Aries, and that's the first sign that goes into not so much me area. Those signs are below, working on yourself, but the transpersonal, where you start connecting to others, when you start looking outside of yourself. So our generation, if you see, when they grew up, what was it that they brought into culture? They brought up reality TV. Why? Because they were interested in the other. It might sound gossipy or something, but they were interested how others live, what others do. It wasn't anymore about me, I'm going to be a star, I'm going to rule the world, Pluto and Leo, or I have to deal with my anxieties and work hard and self-improvement and holistically heal myself, take care of my body, Pluto and Virgo generations. Or they were like, let's connect to each other. let's see what's wrong with the others or what's good with the others. Let's learn from each other. So my generations, that when they were growing up, it was the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, so that was the when they were influencing culture the most. And you can see that they're much more sweeter generation, more agreeable bunch, a bit more superficial, let's say, than the Pluto and Virgo generations that were like the disgruntled grunge and hip hop generation and punk and so on. What did we give to the world, Pluto and Libra generation? We gave them pop, pop music. We gave them our Pluto and Libra stars were Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, this kind of feel-good music, Justin Timberlake. Our stars were the Kardashians, reality show, and very much about beauty, makeup. Kim Kardashian and also Pluto and Libra generation. The reality shows about relationships, about when let's put people together in a room and observe them and see what happens because they're interested in others. And let's make a social experiment and watch what happens when we put married guys with single hot girls and so on. So I'm very fascinated by such shows. My generation is still, I look around with our generations, they're still very much into their reality soap operas, as they call them. But it's mostly because they want to explore relationship and understand the dynamics of others. So this is what this generation came to do. Actually, this generation came in the middle of a lot of divorces, when divorces were becoming the norm. 50% of every couple would divorce. So they were like, okay, we need to figure out how to make this work, how to make relationship work, not just between men and women, between anyone, bosses and employees, any kind of interpersonal relationships. And our generation was the generation that started acknowledging gay marriage, kind of other, that was quite a taboo thing till then. Our generation was the one when they grew up that we're like, yeah, okay, you're gay, or of course that's normal, and a lot more. They're exploring different facets of relationships and a different. Libra is very much a social sign, the rights of others. We became more interested. There is a bit of superficiality there, as they say, the pop culture, the Paris Hilton type, she's Pluto in Libra as well. With it's a Venus sign, so it's going to be about luxury. Our generation likes luxury, like the not so much as the glamour and the loudness and raucousness of the Pluto and Leo generation, but more like our designer handbags became the Hermes bag. At the height of my generation was a big thing to have, and what design brands you have, and lifestyle. Libra is like lifestyle, what restaurants you go to. It's kind of a bit, it's still showy off, but about their lifestyles and the cultural places they visit. And when they were researched with past lifetimes, when they were incarnated, a lot of them saw past lifetimes in the Greco-Roman culture during the time when the age of Aries, that was around 4,000 years ago, 4,000 to 2,000 years ago. And this was when the vernal equinox, the spring equinox, was exactly aligned for 2,000 years. On the day of the spring equinox, the Aries constellation was rising. And of course, this is the opposite sign of Libra. And that's when art was developed. That's when, to a very high extent, it was really perfected. The Greek architecture, the Greek and Roman statues and music, this is very Libra thing, design that still we're trying to imitate to this day, the beauty of the design, the beauty of the arts from that time. They were at the peak of that time. So they were born with a lot of aesthetic flair. And that's why our generation introduced hair extensions, microblading. We were the generation of making your spray tan and making yourself beautiful. Very Libra, to impress others, because what do others think of me? And that's why we don't rock the boat so much, our generation, Pluto and Libra, the Xennials, because we care too much about what others think of us. That's why we were the generation that made social media popular. Okay, this is one thing you can be grateful to us for. I know you're probably not grateful to us for the Britney Spears and the pop and the Hermes bag and the designer dog, but and the reality shows, but you're grateful for us for social media. Thanks to it, we have that. The Generation X developed it. They were the technical skills. The Generation Z, sorry, the Generation Gen X developed it. They had the technical skills, while the Pluto and Libra generations were the ones that not the technology, they developed the social media, the Facebook. My generation was the one when Facebook appeared, Instagram, or even before that, the first chats and forums in the late 90s, early 2000s. We were in our 20s, or we were in our teenage years at that time. And in the 2000s, we were in our 20s, 30s, when all those social media, how to connect with another. I remember at first in the early 2000s, we had chats you'd go to. Well, you have this to thank us about. We kind of prepared the path for the very Aquarian age that we're entering, because Libra jives very well with the other air signs, and we're entering a 2000 years of Aquarius. And we kind of paved the way for that, because even the internet was invented during the Pluto in Libra, by the Pluto in Virgo generation. But we were the one that took it to this level where there is no privacy now. Everyone can be in your living room through the internet and so on. Whereas there a lot of sharing, liking. This is very Libra. Like, share, subscribe, the YouTube, and so on. So you look at Kim Kardashian, Pluto and Libra. Look at Paris Hilton. They're all using those methods. And they made them popular. And the other generations after that and the previous, they took us up, but thanks to us, thanks to the impulse of this huge generation of Pluto and Libra. So we kind of paved the way for this, let's get connected, even though we feel more isolated than other times as well. We cared a lot, and we still care, and more politicians will be coming into power of the Pluto and Libra generations about equality and social justice. That's why we're accepting now, and we're kind of, okay, we'll give rights, we're going to give rights collectively to, you cannot treat others unequally. So we're going to cancel others that don't treat you equally, or that there's no justice there. We're not very much idealistic, like some because like the Pluto and Sagittarius generations, as you hear after that, the Gen Z, they're all about causes, and if this is not sustainable, we cancel. If this is not, sourced humanely, we're more like, is it fair? Is it because we kind of we connect with the other a lot. So if something is not fair, or it's not, there's no justice there, we'll try and we'll bring awareness about it. We also have to mature sexually faster. Our generation, again, was Pluto is very much a sign of sexual. Pluto in Libra is very much a sign of connecting with others, of sexuality. And we did a lot of deep, profound investigation of relationship dynamics. And and by the way, when people with Pluto and Libra were regressed again, they also saw, very interesting thing, they were either living in times of big wars, which is the opposite sign, Aries. So they come here really wanting peace. After you've experienced traumas and big wars, you're like, that does not make sense. It's not the answer. So we're a peaceful generation that I'm sure our leaders that come from here, generally the energy of this generation is going to bring more peace to the world. We're still not fully in positions of power, but I hope more and more, we're more peaceful than others. And also they lived in times of prosperity and peace, where there was arts developing. So we bring this arts and beauty. Just that's why I said designs and brands became so more beautiful visually, and fashions and so on, and design overall. And everyone now cares about, I mean, even the most common home in a normal street can be designed so beautiful inside. We have those shows how you decorate and up fixers, and everyone that, because of the Pluto and Libra generations that brought that energy, now you can have a really beautiful house because of those things. You don't have to be a multimillionaire to have to do the beautiful design, so to speak. And they came to bring peace and long for it, because they were either in times of prosperity and peace, or warring a lot, as I said. They also, when they were regressed Pluto and Libra generations, often they saw past lifetimes when they were very married, or where they were in very codependent relationships, or where they were very situations of trauma. So they came to heal relationship trauma in relationships, though, where there was, because Pluto is this energy that can indicate abuse of some sort, and power and overpowering of one partner over the other. And they came, that's why we're examining so much how we can make relationship more equal. And it's very famous slogan of Pluto and Libra generations, we're all equal. All right, they're here to forge the peace between the factioning polarities, and they will be the bridge between, and will be the bridge between the new and the old world. As I said, we started doing this with social media, but there is something that I'll speak into the other generations. Something is being prepared for us by the universe that there might be something very catastrophic, and they would be the ones that kind of bridge over that, because Libra rules bridges, by the way. And they started changing the consciousness from me towards others, the we generation. So we're very much, let's get all along, let's live peacefully. And that's what we contributed to the world, Pluto and Libra generations. We come to the notorious millennials. The millennials are actually born from 1983 to around 1995, when Pluto was in Scorpio. Sociologists kind of bunched together the Xennials and the Scorpio, the Xennials, the Pluto in Libra, and the Millennials, Pluto in Scorpio. But they started recently recognizing that there is this other faction that I told you, the Xennials, that were a bit overlooked. But interestingly enough, in astrology, those two signs, Scorpio and Libra, were always one sign before. They only became two signs in the last 3,000 years. So there is possibly some similarity, but the millennials in particular, with their distinct characteristics that are very stubborn, that are very, they know what they want and they will not budge. They will not be bullied. They will not be told what to do. Like the Pluto and Leo generations really likes to boss, but the baby boomers, but they cannot boss, and they can't handle the ones that are still bosses. They could not, and they still can't handle the Pluto and Scorpio generation. There is a huge clash here, because Scorpio is a sign that my will is indestructible, and the Pluto in Leo is like, well, my will is also indestructible. Who wins? So that's why the big fights online are happening between these two generations. But the millennials, actually, they had only 10 years, from 83 to 95, 12 years at most to be born. So that's the shortest time Pluto stays in a sign, is its own sign in Scorpio. And that tells us a lot about maybe those souls are a bit too much. Maybe there are not as many souls to be born, because as you hear, what they've been through in previous lifetimes is probably some of the most difficult experiences to forge them, to make them so strong. They were forged in fire, so to speak. While Pluto stays longest in the opposite sign, in Taurus, the more peaceful souls, but we don't have anyone alive from that generation now. So maybe, nature knows what to do, because Scorpio is a very destructive sign, and the millennials are here to destroy the old. The millennials, they're still young. There's still some of them in their late 30s, early 40s, or late 30s, but a lot of them are still in their 20s. And when they come in their 40s, 50s, something probably will come that and you see the old civilization is dying out. And when they were regressed to past lifetimes, Pluto and Scorpio saw that they were often born in times of big transition, in times of big cataclysms, in times of collapsing civilizations. Exactly when it was happening, when a civilization gets deprived, when it becomes too power hungry, when sexuality goes, rampant, and there is no morality, or it's power hungry. Well, civilizations then collapse, and they've witnessed that before, and they know what to do in such crisis situations. They've seen it, and they're coming here to do it better this time, not to get overwhelmed by that. And so they're the ones that have been having the most ups and downs in previous lifetimes. But from the moment they were born, from the moment they became, let's say, into their more adulthood, this is when the whole Western civilization started having problems with the 2008 economic collapse, and now the pandemic and another economic collapse. I mean, and Pluto is the sign of sudden ups and downs and reversals, the highest amplitudes, extremes of anything. So they'll never have like the baby boomers. Leo is the most stable sign, just like the sun wakes up, that rules Leo. Every day rises, without, they have the most stable lives. While Scorpio, Pluto and Scorpio generations, they're the first one en masse to have very challenging lives, because everything is changing around them. Pluto is a sign that is transformative. They are the generation that, if you look at their Facebook from 5 years ago, they had different careers. They were married for someone else. Now they have totally different look. They have totally different career. They have totally different family. They live in a different part of the world. Why is that? Because Pluto rules transformations, rebirths, deaths, and rebirths. They're like the cat with 9 lives. They're like the snake, more importantly, that peels its skin, sloughs its skin, and lives anew. So they are generations that they used to be reborn, to die and be reborn constantly in their identities. That would horrify to live like that, someone with Pluto in Leo generation. Maybe not so much Pluto in Virgo, because they're more mutable, but and Pluto in Libra generations, they're a bit like, I like my peace, but Pluto in Scorpio is like, bring it on. I've gone through cataclysms. I've gone through death so much in past lifetimes. They've witnessed mass death. They've witnessed, I don't know, pandemics and whatever. For them, COVID was like, maybe it awakened in them traumas as well, because, I mean, COVID wasn't as deadly as the plagues and so on, but maybe a lot of them, when they were regress, they've been through some mass death, or past lifetimes where people were dying around them, or where there was some cataclysms, catastrophe, where there was a lot of repression. That's another sign that also has seen slavery, because there is a power game there and being abused in some way. That's the underlining energy of Pluto, to realize power games, power struggles. So they came here at this time to claim their power. They also were reborn in times, some of them even so, they were reborn in times of black magicians, black magic, where again, your will, you either were the one doing that, or it was done to you. And that was especially during Atlantis, the age of Scorpio, which was 16,000 years ago, something like that. This was the time, if you read Rudolf Steiner, because Atlantis was around, it started from the age of Aquarius, the last one, 24,000 years, to the age of Leo, 12,000 years ago. And the age of Scorpio was included in that. That's when the sun, on the spring equinox, the constellation of Scorpio was on the vernal equinox, was behind the sun. So that was like 14,000, 16,000 years ago, something like that. And Rudolf Steiner speaks exactly about that time, that was the time of rise of very powerful black magicians. Till then, it was unified. They were like only with the white forces. And suddenly the followers of Baal, or whatever you want to call it, they appeared, and they're anti-life. So some of them lived through those times, or later they've had much more reincarnations than 16,000 years ago, but some of them maybe were part of incarnations where there was the worship of astral entities, shamanism, using the law of forces to control reality around you, or times when there was a very powerful oppression from tyrant of some sort, or abuse of power. Maybe they witnessed it as a slave or as a master, but there was always some kind of trauma when they looked in their past lifetimes. That extreme trauma, losing your children or whatever, losing everything, a flood coming, destroying everything you have. And so they're very much prepared about such things. It's almost like, what is the universe preparing us with this generation? If it's something like that comes, and wars, Pluto Scorpio is also connected to wars, it's a Mars sign. So they can help us go through such periods in crisis. They're the ones here to lead us through, to actually even destroy the old and to lead us into the new. And they are distrustful. They don't trust people in power. They don't trust governments. Like any self-respecting Scorpio, they don't take words at face value. That's why this is the generation that made conspiracy theory not acceptable. They all know it. I remember my generation when I was reading about conspiracy theories that JFK was killed by the CIA and that there is, all this kind of stuff, and no one else knew about that. And here matures the Millennials, Pluto and Scorpio generations. Now everyone knows about those things, and they're proving true. Document just came out: JFK was killed by the CIA, and they were distrustful about what's happening with the pandemic. They were distrustful. They will not obey. I'm sure there's some that do. For some of them, there might have been awakening of a lot of trauma complexes from mass death from past lifetimes. So maybe they went very paranoid, but a big chunk of them were the ones that started questioning and saying, there is something off here. I don't believe that. The government, those in power, they smell a rat, they're X-rays. You can't lie to them. So they question everything, and power is Leo. Scorpio questions power. Scorpio does not trust, So that's their role. And of course, their generation that when they came into age, shows incredibly powerful and deep and penetrating shows came, not superficial ones, and reality shows like the Pluto and Libra, but they're like Game of Thrones and deep psychological shows, there's so many now. They can't watch just superficial things. I mean, of course, there's different individuals and all these big groups of people, generation, but they want to get to the core of things. And they very much, a lot of that generation have a counselor. I have my counselor. They'll say, oh, my therapist. It's normal now. They normalize it. Before, if you said 20 years ago, you're like, I'm going to a therapist, everyone will be like, why? Were you in a satanic ritual abuse or something? Like, no, everyone goes to a therapist. They normalize that. The Scorpio rules psychology, getting to the bottom. And they're also very much into understanding what is the deep reasons and the deep motivations behind their actions. So that's why, thanks to the Millennials, thank you so much, astrology became so it's a boom in astrology. Scorpio is one of the signs that rules astrology. The other is Aquarius, but that's the Aquarius side is more like the it's a system, it's an alternative knowledge, while Scorpio is the deep knowledge that they're looking for, the psychological healing that they're looking for, because of very traumatized past lives and very nonstop changes that are happening in their life, transformations, powerful transformations that happen periodically for them to reinvent themselves, to shed their old skin. They started either consulting astrology. I'm very Plutonic, so I love the Millennials, even though I'm Pluto in Libra, but for me, Pluto is super strong planet. So I also always investigate, always question, always try and get to the bottom of things. So thank you so much for that, millennials, even though you're so difficult for many, because you're not ones to obey easily. Scorpio is not a sign that obeys. Scorpio is not a sign that is afraid to leave its job if it feels a power play. So you changed again the work culture. Scorpio is a very autonomous sign. And you change the work culture by, now bosses have to treat people with more respect, with more, maybe they brought up the harassment culture where the smallest thing is a infringement on your or on your wholeness or whatever. You can't step up on a scorpion. They're gonna sting you, and this is what the millennials are doing. The art is that the Pluto in Scorpio. The music that is it's more like Lady Gaga. You can see the scorpionic energy there. Miley Cyrus, Katy Perry, Taylor Swift, and you can see they're bratty a bit. Let's say they're not the easiest. They're very formidable characters, all of them, and they're like, I will do what I want, you can't tell me, and they sing about things, especially Taylor Swift. If you listen to her words, I used to kind of bunch her with the Pluto of Libra generation pop stars and bunch her up with sweet love, or you broke my heart, whatever. But no, when I listen to her songs, there is a lot of poignant and deep topics that she speaks about in this music, even though I'm not a fan or anything, but still, they talk about the inner shadow, facing it, the inner monster, Lady Gaga as well. And as you probably also notice, there is a bit more self-destruction in that generation. If they don't get what they want, they're willing to destroy it, to leave, and rather than tolerate some abuse of some sort. Plus, this generation is highly tattooed. I haven't seen it so much in Pluto and Libra. Pluto and Virgo generations were tattooed. It was more like a kind of a self-harm thing, there, or like some kind of a criticism to society. But Pluto and Scorpio generation, Scorpio rules tattoos and piercings, and I've noticed almost every one of the millennials who have of the Pluto and Scorpio generation would have a tattoo of some sort, and piercing, self-mutilation as well, and so on. Also, they're sexualized generation, but it can go dark because they can be like sexual addictions and such kind of obsessions, compulsiveness. There's more compulsiveness that's observed in this generation, but also they're here to show us the sacredness of sex and to kind of transform sex from this, because the baby boomers and the Gen Xers, maybe they made profane sex. Sex became too profane, promiscuous, without meaning. But Pluto in Scorpio wants to bring the meaning back into connection and into sex. This kind of sacred transformation. Well, of course, not every Pluto in Scorpio person is a tantric master, but they're very interested in that topic of sexuality, and a lot of them explore a lot of different sexual identities. The Pluto in Scorpio generation started the boom of I'm bisexual, I'm asexual, all kind of like there's 20 sexual identifications. They're exploring that. Pluto and Libra were exploring the dynamic between people, the relationships. That's why they're so much into voyeuristic reality shows. So while Pluto and Scorpio generations are exploring the dark underbelly, the psychological connection sexually. So they're experimenting. I know many Pluto and Scorpio youngsters that are gone through a few different sex phases, asexual, bisexual, pansexual. I don't even know I'm a different generation, so I don't understand it. I'm not judging it. Everyone can do whatever, but they exploring those things, and they're okay with those things being there. And thank you for opening this for us. But again, they have to bring the sacredness of sex and using sex not as a power tool, a manipulation tool, or as a compulsion, but using sex as a divine transformation through deep connection and feeling with another. They also are very much into anything occult. They made it mainstream, like astrology, tarot. Thanks to them, there is such a big boom in such societies, YouTube, online, sex therapy, energy healing, shamans. If you go to retreats where there is energy healings, workshops on energy and power and transformation and trauma healing, it's usually full of Pluto in Scorpio generations. All right, so thank you for your work and keep doing the thing, because obviously you'll be the ones that lead us through some catastrophes and cataclysms happening all the time, but you'll be the one that will do the heavy lifting at that time. And because you're the psychologically toughest generation, that it's at its prime right now. So I'm curious what the universe is preparing for us. I forgot to say something else about the millennials, the Pluto and Scorpio generations. For me, I also see them that they'll be the pirates. If there is some kind of dictatorship that is happening already around the world, if there is some kind of restriction, they'll create the underground culture. This is very Pluto and Scorpio. They'll create, if some people don't want to participate in society and they're going to be cut out from society, or they're going to be punished in some way, they would create the alternative methods like the bitcoins or some other alternative methods of people to pay. If there is, as it's coming to this, I mean, the next 30 years, Saturn in Capricorn that happened in 2020, and it's 30-year cycle, 34-year cycle. So the next, let's say, almost 30 years, there will be a lot of constriction, a lot of limitations, a lot of separation of things, in a sense that even now they're doing it in England, they're going to start doing it everywhere in around the world. The 15-minute cities, they would impose it over the next 30 years, because Capricorn energy, this Pluto-Saturn cycle that rules the next 30 years, is about separating, is about limiting the ability to move, and it's about a lot of rules, control, dictatorship. It's going to be here, guys. I'm sorry, but they're the pirates, Pluto in Scorpio generation. They'll find ways underground to continue to survive, to continue to do it. They might call them even criminals. The system, might call them criminals, but they'll allow, because they're such conspiracy theorists and they don't like being ruled and so on, they'll make those paths that allow others to exist if they don't want to fit in those rules that this whole cycle of 30 years is imposing on the world. Hopefully it will fall down earlier. So, but that's one more thing I wanted to add. So now we continue with Pluto in Sagittarius generation. They're called Generation Z. They started being born from 1995 until 2008, Generation Z. Pluto in Sagittarius. I have a friend who interviews people. She hires them. So she interviews thousands of people. And she says, I'm in love with Gen Z generation. They're incredible. And I'm like, why? And she said, they're such free souls. They are idealists. They're full of causes. She says, I don't remember our generation being so idealistic, or me, or like no other generations. It's like those people, they're with causes. Now these people are teenagers currently. Some of them are into their 20s already, but they're the very young generation. They're the TikTokers as well. And and she says they're causes generations. And yesterday I was sitting with my husband and the kids in Seattle, which is a very kind of woke city. And there was a table next to us with Gen Zers sitting there. And you could see that they're in their late teens, early 20s. And they all had badges about different causes everywhere. And they all look like a mixture of such an interesting. Sagittarius is like a hodgepodge of, you mix all cultures and ideas and genders, and there's no discrimination in this generation. There's no judgment. Sagittarius is not a sign that will judge. Sagittarius is not a sign. Sagittarius is an all-embracing sign. It's very Jupiter energy. So this, and she told me, my friend, she said, like they don't notice if people are black or white or gay or from a different country, Muslims, whatever. She says our generation noticed that, still notices, but for them it's like it doesn't exist. They are born without this discriminatory nature like the previous ones. So they're paving the road, and they would bring the death of, racism will disappear, xenophobia will disappear with those people. Gender fear and phobia will disappear, and judgment with those people. They would, whatever, if you're a different culture, whatever, they don't notice it. You're the same for them. We're all one. That is from God. And it's fascinating that when regress those people, and a lot of Gen Zers or Pluto and Sagittarius generation, they started speaking about star seeds. So like they remember past lifetimes, some of them, where they were in other galaxies. I call them the galactic hitchhikers, the Pluto and Sagittarius generation. I mean, it doesn't mean everyone is an alien from them and comes from different planets or whatever, but some souls, they've had experiences also on other dimensions, on other planets. I don't know how exactly to put it, but they haven't been just human, or so they come to experience like Sagittarius, like a traveler. They hitchhike and let me try 4 or 5 lives here, and they don't have those judgments like we humans have. I'm not saying they're not human. Everyone who is born here is connected to the earth. That's one mistake Pluto and Sagittarius can do, that they think, we're otherworldly. They all come here to contribute to the world. But a lot of them, when regress, they would see past lifetimes where they were persecuted for their religious beliefs, when they were parts of religious wars, like Muslims, Christians, where they were part of situations where where people would fight or war because of their color, because of their religious belief, nationality. A lot of them actually come from during the genocide, the Second World War, when people were killing each other because of nationality and race. So they learned those lessons. They're not going to repeat them. That's why they don't notice races. They don't notice gender inequalities or differences in people, colors, and different cultures. And I know a lot of the old generations are like, no, we have to keep, we're 2 different cultures, mixing them together will destroy society. But this generation will say, no, we'll find a way that everyone lives together, because this is the will of God. He sent them in big groups, and they come with high ideals, their philosophical outlook, awareness of higher power and spirituality. They're very spiritual generation. I call them the high priests and priestesses. They're not religious so much as they all have their own spirituality. Well, of course, I'm sure that some of them that don't believe in anything, they're always individuals. But on the whole, they have some ideals. And they are the ones that, if you don't, basically, they're the generation that will cancel you, not kind of cancel you, but they'll turn their back on companies and celebrities who are not aligning to their belief system. So if you believe in sustainability, or if you believe in not using child labor, whatever, they would not they would not use those companies, and they would not they're really true to their ideals, they're really true to their ethics and to their morals, and you can't make them stay in a company. My friend told me that they're very difficult to work with because they have no company loyalty. Well, Sagittarius is not a loyal sign. They're loyal only to their beliefs. And if a company does not stick to its ideals or does not inspire those people, they would not stay there. So there'll be a lot of this generation Z, they'll be not staying in one workplace till they're, all their life, unless this company really motivates them, really has a vision for them for the future, and they really stick with those principles. And they're opening something for humanity, that they're part of a bigger cause. That's the only way you can keep them. Plus, they need a lot of freedom. This generation will be traveling, I don't know how much it's getting more difficult overall, but there would be moving companies, moving from town to town. They'll be very fluid, and they want to experience, they want to embrace all aspects of life. So that's why, as I said, that they'll be the generation that ends xenophobia, religion, hatred. I mean, they need to come into power when they're in their 40s, 50s. By that time, I don't think those things will exist anymore. They'll heal the racial rift, remove judgment about differences between people. And they bring ancient knowledge, high priests and priestesses. Plus, if there is like collapse of society, and I'm seeing it's happening. I see it astrologically. The Millennials, Pluto in Scorpio will help us deal with the trauma. And in the most critical moment, they would help us go through it. And they'll be part of the ones that destroy the old system, the old civilization, so to speak, and the old morals. The Pluto in Scorpio, Millennials generation. Well, the Pluto in Sagittarius generation will bring us new hope. They would create the new spiritual laws. They would create the new ideals. They would allow us to believe in a future brighter, because these, as I said, the idealists, usually everyone starts out as an idealist, but when you become middle-aged and like, oh, I have my property to take care of, my family, ideals fall off. This generation will not be like that. They'll keep their spark of idealism. They'll keep their spark of hope for a better future and vision. They have grand vision for a better future till the last days, in the next 70, 80 years till their life. They'll be a dominating, or 60 years, let's say, they'll be a dominating force. So they'll bring the new philosophy, the new ideals, the new kind of a more united spiritual beliefs for everyone. They'll bring knowledge, higher knowledge. As I said, they've been high priestesses. Not all of them, you can't have a whole generation, but some of them might have been or have experiences. A lot of other coaches, a lot of them saw in past lifetimes that not only were they persecuted for their beliefs or faith, but they traveled a lot. They were nomads, they were gypsies, they were, Roma, or whatever you call it. They were free souls. As I said, some of them were from other galaxies, just hitchhiking. They came from experience of more freedom, and they're here to bring it back. Sagittarius is a freedom-loving sign. And I think they'll be in their height in 20, 30 years as well. They'll be like in their 40s, 50s, whatever. And that's the time when the Pluto Saturn conjunction in Capricorn releases its grip it will be very potent in the next 20 years. And I spoke about it, that it's about constriction and rules, rules, and everyone's like worried what they're going to do wrong, not to do wrong, and separation. Well, this generation, Pluto and Sagittarius, Gen Z, when they're in their 30s, 40s, they will dissolve this cycle. They will bring back the freedom. They'll bring the new ideology. They'll be the one that they won't do it with force. They'll do it with knowledge. They'll do it with awareness. And they're very intuitive. If they're being fed lies, usually they intuit with their heart if it's a lie or not. But there is one danger from this generation. They're very idealistic, so they can also, especially if they're not in touch with that intuition that I spoke with, because a lot of them were born in civilizations previously that were more intuitive rather than logical. In the Atlantean times, when it was the age of Sagittarius, that was when people were not logical. They didn't think logically. They didn't have that skill yet. They were all intuiting everything. They were seeing everything in images. They were seeing the invisible worlds as a reality to them. They were sensing stuff. But some of us, many of us, are not in touch with that. And a lot of Pluto in Sagittarius generation will be, but the ones that are not, they're very susceptible to propaganda. So someone can manipulate them, especially of the more manipulative other generations, for their own purposes. They'll present something like a cause, like an ideal, let's go all green, or let's, whatever. And they say, let's save the planet or whatever, but and this generation, okay, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna shop from these companies. We fight for this, but the others, they have to learn to see the truth, that they're not being manipulated towards someone else's interest or towards enslavement on humanity. And I know that this generation will solve this, even if initially in their more youthful years, they're more blinded by this naivety. They're a generation of causes. They'll never stop doing causes into their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. They'll be the ones that will recognize the lies from the truth and will liberate us and give us freedom back. So another thing is that Sagittarius rules a natural law, not the law that humans create. It's the law of God. Pluto in Sagittarius generation will bring the understanding of those laws back, because we don't understand them very well yet. When Pluto was in Sagittarius, the law of attraction, this kind of positive thinking boom came. That's when the book was published as well. But the Pluto in Sagittarius generation, when they grow up, and they're growing up already, they will help us understand those laws, because they'll be living those laws. And they would implement them into the new world order, into the new society that comes, and they would make those natural divine laws on the basis of the human laws that we create. So I have I'm putting a lot on you guys. They'll be ones dealing with moral dilemmas about right and wrong. Oh yeah, they're also quite ADHD, restlessness, attention deficit. So they're kind of like, can't sit in one place. A lot of this generation, because Sagittarius is a restless sign, it wants to explore. It has a lot of knowledge. It has come with knowledge. It knows how things are. All it know. I know what it is. I've been an adventurer through so many lives. And you're trying to make me sit on this chair here and listen to you for 6 hours or 7 per day? I need freedom. I need adventure. I need to go outside and explore the field. So because we still haven't done this kind of education, because Sagittarius is also very much about being in nature and outdoors and outside. So we put a lot of these kids, Pluto and Sagittarius kids, at schools with the old system that is very much about rules and regulations. And they started wilting there. They were diagnosed with ADHD. They were medicated. So I hope that when they come into age, that's what they'll do. They'll change the educational system. They'll change the whole, not only universities, but how kids, because the other polarity is Gemini, all the educational system to be more aligned to the free spirit nature of kids. And they'll bring that knowledge about it. They'll bring a lot of knowledge about the sciences. They'll be the generation that finally science will start looking into the invisible worlds. Finally, science will start looking into the spiritual. They would unify science and spirituality together. And they'll be highly educated generation that's not necessarily just through universities or anything. They have just this inner knowledge. But of course, they can be very hard. They can clash a lot with, they are very much more, a lot of their parents are Gen Xers, Pluto in Virgo generation, where they're very work-oriented, where they're very work ethics, and more detail-oriented, while Pluto in Sagittarius generation is, I want to be free, and I don't have loyalty to anyone. I have loyalty only to the truth, my truth, or the higher truth, whatever it is. But they're not a hard-headed generation like Pluto in Scorpio, Pluto in Leo. All right. So a lot of them, when they were regressed as well, they saw that they had past lifetimes, not only like travelers, nomads, or during religious wars, or during like foreigners that were persecuted because of their different beliefs or look or whatever. They also saw past lifetimes as Indians, native Indians, or cowboys, refugees, where they were refugees. They were traveling or they were exploring new lands, and a lot of pioneers as well. When they came to America's ascendant is Sagittarius, so a lot of Pluto and Sagittarius souls were probably here when Australia and America was being populated. You need to be a brave soul, idealistic soul, to want to create a new world. So they were born then. They were either cowboys or Indians. Native Indians were very free spirited. They were in touch with natural laws. They were very intuitive. So a lot of them have memories of free Indians. So they're bringing back this natural spirituality that is inherent in all of us. Now, let's go to the Pluto in Capricorn generations. They started being born from 2008, and they will be born till 2024. So we have one more year of those souls coming. I call them the elders, the ancient ones. They're so different than the previous Pluto in Sagittarius Gen Z generation, who are free-spirited, idealistic causes, and so on. These, I call those the ancient ones, the masters of boss babies. I have two of them. They're the boss. Capricorn is boss. That was Pluto is in Capricorn when those kids are being born. And a lot of moms that I talk with, they say, I feel like my child is the adult, Pluto in Capricorn generation. Like I feel there is ancient wisdom there. Those souls have had quite many incarnations in very ancient times. They bring ancient knowledge to us. And they will, once the new society, the new world is being created, they will create the new human rules. The Pluto in Sagittarius Gen Z, for the new civilization that's developing, that will develop, we're not there yet, they'll bring the ideals, the spirituality, the teachings. But Pluto in Capricorn generation, they'll build the society, they're structure builders on the material level, following the ideals from the Pluto in Sagittarius generation. They'll build the new cities, the new human laws, like the new government laws and structures that will come in the next 50, 60 years when they come into power. They're still being born, in probably not 50, but I believe that in 30, 40 years, Pluto and Capricorn generation will create the new rules for the age of Aquarius. They'll create the new social structure, so to speak, the new institutions, because the current institutions, since Pluto entered in Capricorn, they're slowly dying. They have another 30 years at most because of the last cycle of Pluto in Capricorn conjunct Saturn that started and is 30 years old, but that's their dying phase. And this generation, because they come from ancient times, they've lived the ancient, very wise souls. They've lived in times also of big constraints. They come from times where something was very limited or difficult. So they are not afraid to do that, and they can build all over again. The Pluto in Scorpio generation will lead us through the crisis of the civilization, through the destruction. They would instigate it, and they would lead us through the destruction. They would undermine this old civilization, like starting with the conspiracy theories, then undermining the structures. Pluto and Sagittarius help us find meaning and hope again and give us the belief system. Pluto and Capricorn organize the rules and new reality, help us rebuild, teach us how to live responsibly and with less, because they will be the builders in the next 30, 40 years. You have to learn to live with less, with more constraint. And all of us collectively have been prepared for this. And in this Pluto-Saturn cycle, which is 30 years that started in Capricorn, we would learn to do that. But those will be the masters, Pluto and Capricorn, that are natural at it. How to live with this, how to be more productive, how to be less consumerism. You see already, while we're still Pluto in Capricorn, it's all turning around from the consumerism of the previous years. It's all about, driving less, 15-minute cities, so you don't travel everywhere, that you have just everything within 15 minutes, how to be more productive, how to have more self-discipline. COVID taught us to take better care of our immune system, how to be more responsible in adults, and those kids are born adults already. But they're very more skeptical. They can clash a lot with their parents. As I said, Pluto and Capricorn generations, they'll be a tough one. They'll not be as stubborn, but as the Pluto in Scorpio generation or Pluto in Leo, but they would be skeptical. They would look at their parents and they would easily see the mistakes of their parents. They would easily point out, because Capricorn is a sign of judgment. So Capricorn sees a bit like Virgo, but Capricorn sees when something is broken and it's not working. And it sees when something, Saturn is supervisor. So you can notice that your children with Pluto and Capricorn are telling you what you have to do, telling you how to do things better, kind of bossing you around, as I said, and not taking any bullshit from you. If you're telling them, oh, don't watch too much TV or whatever, and you're watching TV, they'll call out on your bullshit. This is very much Capricornian energy. They have a dry humor as well. They're very critical thinkers. They would recognize when something is wrong, and after 30 years approximately, they'll rebuild the civilization. They can have more power struggles with their parents and authorities because they will hold them accountable for the wrong things they do, or the hedonistic, greedy, or undisciplined or unconscious actions. My kids, they love sweets, but if they have more than one or two sweets, they're like, no, that's not healthy. They're prevention. Capricorn is prevention. They'll change society and the whole civilization. Not from, let's fix the mistake after it's happened, like Pluto and Virgo generation have to do now. They'll have to be like, no, we have to prevent this before it happens. We have to prevent the destruction of the oceans, prevent the destruction of your health, and so on. And they'll give us a lot of natural ways to do that. And they would not be hedonistic and pompous or grandomaniac like us, using the resources of the earth like we did. They'll be very sparse with the resources. They'll be very considerate of the resources. But the beauty of Capricorn is that you can take it to the rockiest and least resourceful place, and it can make a castle out of it instead of complaining, so Capricorns, you can put them in very tough conditions, very limited. So the world, the universe is prepared. They're prepared. Something's going to happen where things will be so much more restricted and limited, but out of this, they'll build a new reality with those building blocks. And I've noticed this generation, they love Minecraft. All kids born in the last 12, 14 years since Pluto and Capricorn started, 15 years, let's say, they're crazy about Minecraft. It's almost all. And I was like, what is Minecraft about? I started watching it. They're building. They go and create villages. My kids at 4 and 5, they know if cataclysm happens, what you need to do to create village and to be self-sustaining, that you need water resources, water filters, that you need seeds, that you need to do digs for the water to go, the dirty water. They're master masons already. They are master builders. The high masons will come. They're coming through them to build something, the good masons, the good Masonic, to rebuild the civilization, basically. But it means that it will be destroyed first somehow. I don't know. And they can live with a lot or a little, whatever it is, on a dime or whatever it's called. They will be the judge of the previous generations and humanity now. And because they will bear the consequences and the karma of the previous generations. Saturn, Capricorn, it's karma. So they'll be very aware of the consequences. It's not like, let's consume and take, and Pluto in Leo generations, Pluto in, even till the previous one. No, they'll be like, no, we have to be very wise and self-disciplined. They will transform the work ethics and the career market. They will usher in brand new career options, because Capricorn is the sign of career, work. The work market and the careers will be totally different in 30 years, but they're okay with that, and they'll work very hard at the new things. They're good and solid, ethical workers, hardworking, seriously minded. That's why sometimes if their parents are from the previous generations, they might consider them, say, Pluto and Libra, that is more like hedonistic generations. They might consider them, they might clash again somehow. They will revive good old traditions, ancient traditions that have been dead for a while. They will go back to the good old traditions that work, the good old values. Not all of them, just the ones that work. Tried and tested methods and lifestyles. There can be even the need for certain years in their lives to live very minimally and to live back to basics. And they're okay with that. They've done it. They've lived in very limited conditions before, and they've done it. So very restricted and so on. They can do it again. They're not afraid of that. They're more earthy, natural. I think they'll create incredible revival of the earth and connection to the earth as well. But of course, they've also have lived through repressive political regimes, maybe during the Holocaust in Nazi Germany, maybe during Nero, or any kind of, imagine any political repressive regime. They've seen it, because Capricorn rules dictatorships. Capricorn rules too much control as well. So they're here to recognize that. They've done it before. Are they going to do it again? They lived in totalitarian societies, I've written here, with rigid structures. So they're coming back to help us recognize such authoritarian regimes and extricate themselves from such. Oftentimes, they also will be one of the generations that lived as slaves, just like the Pluto and Virgo generation, which is hard labor and drudgery, and Pluto and Scorpio, which is abuse of power. This generation also has had experience of slavery, but slavery where it's like, where you feel totally desperate, where there is not only oppression over you, but there's no hope for the future. So they're coming here to overthrow such kind of oppressors and to take their power back. Nowadays, I mean, there's still slavery, it's going underground, but they're here to recognize when power structures are too oppressive and to hopefully change that for us. They might take a step back from high tech and go back to the earth. This might be a generation, even though I don't see it from my kids, they love their Minecraft, but they kind of like such things where it's building and stuff. But I believe that when they grow up in the next 30 years, that generation, 40 years, the generation will take us back more to nature. The ancient souls coming here and more disciplined, and have the ability to say no, have the not indulgent society like us, not grandiose like us, salt of the earth people. And the last generation I'm going to talk about is the Pluto in Aquarius generation, which starts from 2023 for a couple of months till 2044. Very long time. One of the things I told you is I think that there will be a lot less people born with Pluto in Aquarius. That generation will have less souls than the Pluto in Leo generation, where was the big boom, baby boomers, as we call them, is the opposite sign. That generation, I think some of them will be, I don't know, from other from other dimensions. They're very strongly connected to Atlantis, because Atlantean age started during the age of Aquarius, 24,000 years ago. And Atlantis turned out to be highly technological. The whole Atlantean civilization is under the Aquarian energy. That's why it was destroyed in the opposite sign. So now a new civilization is starting in the age of Aquarius again. Let's see if we can do it better this time. And a lot of those souls that witness that will come there, will come back, so they can help us that this mistake doesn't repeat this time. They'll be very technologically advanced as well, but I believe a lot of them they'll teach us to use technology for the raising of the human consciousness rather than for suppression of humanity and control of humanity. Aquarius is a sign that changes suddenly. Just like Pluto is a very traumatic sign, Aquarius in ancient astrology is considered a difficult sign as well, because, and in modern astrology, it's ruled by Uranus. Uranus is sudden catastrophes. So those souls, actually the souls that we've been researched, because they're still not born, but the ones with South Node in Aquarius or in the 11th house, or with Uranus, which is similar now, is just a lot of those souls will come. But they come from en masse cataclysm of some sort, because something suddenly happened, something shook, something suddenly changed. I don't know if you've had Uranus transits, which is the rule of Aquarius, but when a Uranus transit comes, it's like your life turns 180 degrees suddenly, but it frees you in some way. It's a huge crisis, but it's so liberating and so freeing. It turns everything around. So they came as some of those souls that were observed with strong Aquarius past life indications. And as I said, the Pluto generation that will come, they will be en masse like that. They witnessed something big like that. Or they were here when there were sudden events that changed something. They also, there's some almost like some of them might have been like, there might be more PTSD and anxiety in that generation because of the forcefulness and suddenness of how a reality is changing and has changed in previous lifetimes for them. So there'll be a lot of focus this generation that brings in the next 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ahead into mental health, into the brain, into the nervous system, how to improve the nervous systems. I think they'll have a much more sensitive nervous system than other generations. So they'll have to be very careful with electrical currents and so on, because these kids will be like, they'll be born like an electrical, themselves a network of some sort. So because of them, we'll have to really, as you see already, so many autistic children are being born, which is with the nervous system. So because of this new generation, we'll have to be very careful, and we'll have to really develop more naturally. They'll help us rethink our relationships with technology, which is Aquarius, our relationships with waves and all those Wi-Fi's and waves and everything like that, because they'll be hypersensitive to those things. And another thing is that they'll be telepathic. Not all of them, but a lot more children will start being born telepathic. Aquarius rules those invisible channels, just like it rules the worldwide network. There are channels everywhere of information passing here that you don't see. Maybe someone's downloading a movie and it's passing here, don't see it, another song or whatever. Well, there's such channels everywhere in the cosmos that connect you with the Akashic records, or the knowledge and information of everything, or between each other. It's like a huge net around us. Well, those kids will be tuned in into those networks, and they would be able to basically retrieve such information that's telepathic, downloading information, they can call them. I think at least 10-15% of this generation might have this ability, if not more. I also think they can be another extreme with this generation, that, Aquarius is the opposite of Leo. Leo is the heart and the soul. Aquarius is the mind. So there can be some people being born that inhabit bodies, but they're fragmented, they're disconnected from the heart. There might be those that are artificially created in those stuff, like who knows, because only a baby that grows close to the mother's energy field, in her energy field, there's magical, like we'll call them magical, but the esoteric forces, the energy of the mother interact with the energies of the baby body to implant the soul fully in there. And if they start doing those babies that are born in a machine, like they're showing everywhere, you don't know what disconnection and defragmentation they can be of the soul. So it can be like almost soulless, walking around, robotic, like only their mind works, but there is no feeling. There is like living in a bubble. You cannot connect to anyone emotionally through your heart. That's another danger. Actually, interesting enough, Ra, the creator of human design, says that from 2027, which is pretty much when Pluto enters Aquarius, around the time, new types of children will be born that they'll be totally different physically, psychologically, emotionally. They would be telepathic, which is very Aquarian. but they'll only be able to work in groups of 5, which is very Aquarius, to work in a group, to connect with others. And then they can do amazing things, but individually, they'll be like, they can't do anything, like a piece of them is missing or something, which is a bit grim. I don't take everything human design or races with full value because it was channeled information and you never know. I know a lot of it is true in human design because I've lived it, but you don't know. Sometimes there are different levels of entities that can give information, and they can mix in something that is more lower vibrational with the true and high information. But who knows, if people start making babies in those artificial wombs, that can be exactly what Ra is talking about, this kind of but they're telepathic, but I think there'll be natural telepathic kids that are born. Also, Aquarius rules the DNA. Pluto rules the DNA. Aquarius is the human genome. Aquarius is a human sign. Kids that are born now will probably have, first of all, there'll be less of them. So something with the reproduction, a lot less being born. Second, longer lives, because Pluto in Aquarius rewires the genome. We all will go through Pluto in Aquarius. I hope we all have some rewiring of genetic material, unlocking of different genetic material. But but we're talking about the generation, not what will happen to us, the other generations. But those kids will have a different DNA. I mean, some of it artificially changed, like there's a lot of DNK changing and splicing things, like in medicine that is happening now. You know what it is, the mRNA, whatever. But they're doing, they said they'll do all of them like that and a lot more. So some of those kids might be born with different genetics because of human manipulation, but others will be born with different genetics because of divine intervention, because they are something is changing on the physical molecular level for us. And those kids, they will create the new society. So the Pluto in Capricorn, they'll build the new structures. While Pluto in Aquarius society, they'll create the culture, the new culture of the new civilization. In about 30, 40 years, you'll start seeing this new culture, which I'm very hopeful has the higher manifestation of Aquarius, which is brotherhood, living in communities, living in like-minded communities, and not so much connected by blood people, but people connected by their ideals, by their helping each other as a society with no central power to regulate them. This generation will not accept one boss or one president on top of them to tell them what to do. They will all want to be self-governing. It's the most independent sign together with Sagittarius. So definitely this generation comes in wanting to be independent. And the high vibration of Aquarius is living in communities as independent individual, like as equally important as everyone, but independent and unique. While the law manifestation of Aquarius is isolation. So I hope this generation is not like super isolated from each other. A lot of people with Aquarius signature in past lifetimes saw themselves that they willfully or unwillfully left their tribe and their society to live on the fringes. So this will make us, I think this generation is the first generation that will start truly living en masse in communities like humans are supposed to live, in brotherhood communities. I believe, and I know it in my bones, there will be the generation that for them is normal to live like that. And hopefully our previous generations will get to live a little bit of that for them is just a normality. A lot of them will come from past incarnations where humans did those experiments to live in communities, like the Essenes, the Cathars, the Bogomils, where everyone is equal and have equal rights. And when everyone helps together, it's kind of a collective. It sounds very communistic, but communism is a very materialistic thing. Wow, the government controls there. Well, true Aquarius values is, this is our village, we're 200 people here, or this is our town, we're 100,000 people here. We make all the laws, we make all the rules, we decide where all the resources go, everyone votes. So they'll come, incarnate back from, they've been incarnated before in very democratic societies. For a little bit, Greece was like that, ancient Greece, where the people of those towns voted. So they would They would not tolerate anymore this bipartisan political parties. They're just changing roles and clothes, and it's the same old, same old. They would revolutionize the whole world, so to speak. So I have a lot of hope in them. I think a lot of star seeds as well. Aquarius is aliens and so on. A lot of them will be remembering past lifetimes as aliens and revolutionary. I think that might be the first generation that connects us to aliens as well, and that aliens are okay to meet us when the majority of population on Earth is put in Aquarius generation when they're in power, because they've been there, done that, Pluto in Aquarius. They've been before on Earth when the Earth was in contact with other dimensional and other extra, not earthly beings and civilizations. We've been periodically in touch with such, so they myself might be incarnations of some of those. So revolutionary freedom and right fighters, scientists. The only danger is dissociation, disconnection, isolation, people without connection to their hearts. But we might go through certain period of having a few of those around as well. I hope not the majority. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed my look at the generations, and each generation is unique. It's incredible. It has its own purpose here on Earth. This is through how I see things. Of course, I'm a bit intuitive, but it's mostly astrology. But if you want to study with me what Pluto in Aquarius will do for you personally, not study, listen, I'll do the hard work. You just hear what it is and what exactly it will affect in your horoscope. Is it going to transit a house cusp? Is it going to square Venus or sextile your midheaven, or make an opposition to your Mars? I'll cover all of those topics over 5-6 hour webinar, so you can watch it over the next 20 years, or just go to the thing that's relevant for you. Say you have Pluto square your moon in 16 years, you know what to expect. So thank you so much, and please join me at my webinar, which is discounted for the early birds, those of you who come there on time, who take their seat earlier. Thank you so much.